Welcome to On Thursdays We Thrive podcast. We are licensed therapists here on Long Island, New York.
Our goal is to provide tools and resources to anyone considering starting therapy and to fight the stigma of mental health through a millennial lens.
Even though we are licensed therapists, our podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a replacement for individual psychotherapy.
To book a session with us, head on down to longislandteletherapy.com. So have a seat and get ready to thrive, learn, explore, and grow with us.
Welcome back to another episode of On Thursdays We Thrive. I'm Sam.
And I'm Liana.
And today we are so excited to bring up the topic of friendships and changing friendships, accepting and flow in friendships, making friendships as an adult, and how not to internalize these changes.
And we're even more excited to be joined to discuss this topic by Sarah Sasson. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only is she as passionate about mental health as we are, but she has an awesome podcast which focuses on mental health, but she's experienced these friendship changes firsthand as a millennial. And the podcast is called It's Fine, I'm Fine. Sarah has been living in New York City for the last 6.5 years, and over these years has seen an immense amount of shifting and changes in her friendships. Sarah has been openly speaking about mental health since 2016, when she first began exploring her own mental health and therapy. She then launched her podcast in 2019 with the hopes of normalizing emotional expression and her anxiety disorder and helping others feel less alone. While the podcast has helped others, she also emphasizes how much it helps her to have an outlet and be able to be open about her mental health. Welcome, Sarah. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we get started, we're going to get into what we call our glows and grows. And on your podcast, you call it a peak and pit.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you're familiar with it. So Liana, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So my glow has been that I've actually been reading more. And I used to be an only self-help reader, no surprise. But then my friend got me into reading nonfiction and fiction and psychological thrillers. And the first book she recommended to me, I was immediately hooked. So then I just kept on going and getting more and more recommendations. And I've been flowing through books faster than I thought. So
wow.
Yeah. And my grow is that I'm doing another speaking engagement. I shared in the podcast about how I did one prior for a group of school social workers, and I'm doing another one for a high school with like 100 students. God bless my soul. And I'm nervous, but I'm trying not to think about it too much. So, it's exciting. And the thing is, it'll be another notch under my belt, but definitely getting through those nerves and, feelings around it.
I'm excited for you.
Same.
Thanks. I'll let you guys know how it is.
Please do.
So Sarah, do you want to talk about your glow and grow?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you both so much for having me. I'm so excited. This would be my glow, but I unfortunately, my move is the precedence for my glow this week, but I'm also very excited about this. So my glow is that I moved this week and I have been living in this like small, just, kind of old, worn down apartment for like a year and a half. I moved in the height of COVID. And I was just I really outgrew it. And so finding an apartment was super, super stressful, but like I'm here and I did it and I moved and it just feels so good. And like waking up here is like, whoa, this is my apartment, but feels really good. So that's my glow. So I guess with my grow, obviously moving is never the easiest thing to do, but I think that's something I'm really trying to be okay with is not getting so overwhelmed with change. And we'll definitely talk about that more in this episode, but like, my boyfriend, like I was complaining to my boyfriend because I was like, I'm so stressed. Like, this is so overwhelming. And he's like, he wasn't trying to invalidate me at all, but he was like, like maybe we should work together on figuring out ways to become okay with how overwhelming this is. And I was like, no, like it's just this one time. Like it won't be like this in the future. And he's like, but life is always stressful. Yeah. He's amazing. And I'm like, okay. So I'm just like really trying to figure out how to be more okay with change. But it's really hard, and being overwhelmed is not like, I'm not good at it. So yeah, that's my girl.
Wow. Well,
Wow.
congratulations on the move. And moving
Yes.
is stressful. I moved last year and never doing it again. It's very stressful and kind of, it sounds like allowing ourselves grace with the overwhelm, right? And taking the help from others and really delving into some of those feelings.
Yeah, totally agree.
I saw it on Instagram and I was like, wow, like bless. Like that must be really stressful right now.
Same. It was horrible.
But, no, I love that he is so supportive and has such a like good outlook. Like that's something I'm just learning too, but I'll touch on that in a second. My glow is pretty general because I noticed that I had just like an overall like more positive week, that it was less stressful. There was more happy moments in this week than in more recent weeks. So my glow is pretty general for today, but when I was reflecting back, I was like, yeah, actually it was just an overall like better week. So
that's great.
You know, mental health wise, that was nice. Awesome. And my grow, I'm like nodding my head, Sarah, when you're talking, because that's something that I'm trying to work on, is being okay with change. And whereas I feel like in recent conversations, I've been like, this is going to sound cliche, but a dream is never too big to attain, I'm realizing. And like, why stop at something that you just had a thought of when you were, younger or something. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out what that change would look like, and going into it with faith and hope, and kind of taking that leap and figuring out how to direct that, but scary. So being okay with change. So I understand that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That is awesome. I'm happy for you. It is scary, but excitement and anxiety come from the same place and give us the same physical and emotional sensations. So it's tough sometimes to weave through. Awesome. All right. Well, when we get back, we're going to get into changing friendships. Sarah shares her own experience with how these friendships have changed for her and how she has kind of gone through the difficulties and normalizing that. So stay tuned. Okay, so Sarah, for those of you who this might be the first time hearing about you and your podcast, would you be able to just share a little bit about how you decided to start a podcast focused on mental health and being so raw and who you are in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been an open book. Like I don't really, and honestly, something I'm working on is being a little more private. I think I tell everyone everything. And while that's definitely something I'm working on, I think there's so much beauty to it, because I've noticed over the course of my life, people have told me like, you're so authentic that it's helped me with this or that. So, when I was a senior in college, I'd always heard the word anxiety, but like both my parents are immigrants. So we weren't openly at the dinner table being like, who has anxiety here? Like, what's the mental health situation? Like, no, like we didn't really speak openly about our like deep emotions, just because when you're an immigrant, everything's about survival. It's not really about like talking things through. So when I was a senior in college, I kind of noticed like, okay, I'm really becoming anxious. And I knew it was anxiety because I would explain what I was going through to my friends. And they were like, I don't know what this is like. Like I would wake up in the morning and feel like nauseous. And my friends are like, are you sick? Like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't think so. And like, I think it was just like my body was connecting to like my thoughts, and I was just having a physical reaction to it all the time. So I was like, okay, this is definitely not something that everyone goes through. And so over winter break of my senior year of college, I knew I was like in a deep depressive state because I couldn't get out of my bed for like weeks, and I just had no self-esteem. And I was just, I don't know. I think it was the culmination of like years of mental health issues that I wasn't really working through. So I approached my mom and I was like, Mom, like, I really want to see a therapist. And at first she was like, oh my God, my daughter wants to see a therapist. Like my parents are French and she was like so weirded out by it. And then eventually they were like, you do what you need to do. Like, we want you to be healthy. So I started going. And at first it was like really, really, really taboo. I didn't tell anyone. I would like, my friend and I would like she would drive me because I didn't have a car and I'm terrible at driving. So she would like sneak me to therapy and back. And like, I wouldn't tell anyone. And then over time, I like started telling people. And then I realized that the more I told people, the more people were like, yeah, I go. Or like someone was like, yeah, like my brother goes. And I was like, wait, we're all in therapy
and we're just silent.
Talks about
we all
like,
do this.
what? I was like, wait, we are all going. And everyone was like, yeah. And I was like, what? So then I had this epiphany and I was like, I need to write a book. Like, I need to write a book about therapy and everyone needs to know that it's normal. And I had this like mission, but I'm not that good of a writer. Like, everyone says, okay, don't be hard on yourself. But like, I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. Like, I'm not the best, like, I'm just not the best writer.
Right.
But I do love talking, which you could probably tell. I love speaking. So podcasts were like kind of on the rise. And I was like, you know what? It would be really great if I could just talk about this. And I honestly, it didn't even click in my brain that I was being like so open. Like I didn't, everyone was like, wow, how do you feel that you're being so authentic and open? And I was like, I don't know. I never really thought about it that way. I just like, I just was like, I want to talk about this because it feels like a lot of people are experiencing it and no one's really talking about it. So I'm going to do it.
You're passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. So so I was like, okay, I'm going to start one. I like was getting over a breakup in 2018. And so this is 2 years after I graduated. And at this point I was like, okay, like I'm doing this. Like for a while I was like, I want to do it, but I didn't do it. And then 2018, I was like, I'm doing this. And I Googled like how to start a podcast, printed out pages, bought the equipment, made a logo, made the name, like everything. And then I kind of chickened out and I was like, I can't do this by myself. And then I became really close with this girl, Liz. And she was like, I love mental health. And she was talking about it on her own page. And I was like, can you just be my co-host? Like, I will feel way more comfortable doing this with someone else. And she was like, yes. And I was like, I don't know where this is gonna go. Like, no one's going to listen to this, but I'm just going to do it. Yeah. So we just recorded some episodes and that's how it started. And I realized with time, sometimes I'm sure both of you know what this is like, but you won't hear for weeks, you won't hear any feedback. And you're like, why am I even doing this? Like, no one's even listening and no one cares. And then someone will pop in randomly from Idaho. And you're like, by the way, I started therapy because I listened to your podcast and I just wanted you to know. And I was like, what? So cool. And crazy. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to continue. And
isn't that wild though? It's like that one little thing
that keeps you going.
Right. Yeah. Because you only had to hear one or two and you were like, all right, I'm going,
Yeah. That's kind of funny. It's kind of like how sounds like how me and Sam got started.
I was just thinking that.
Let's just do it. Like, we don't have everything figured out, but we just need to get started because if we don't, we're not going to do it.
And we were just doing it we kind of made a joke about it at first because we listened to other podcasts together. We listened to yours and we were like, wow, we were like so into podcasting or whatever. And we're like, yeah, we should have our own. And then one day I was like, Liana, how serious are you about that? And she was like, I am. And I was like, crap, Liana actually follows through with her word. So I was like, I think we actually have to do this.
I was like, let's get it. And then we just started working on it.
Yeah. I think something that people don't realize is doing a podcast takes work. You don't just get up and speak. You have to
tried that.
You really have to prep, buy the equipment, you figure it out, plan, make timelines. It is not so simple. And so I think what all three of us know is that you really need to be passionate about what you're talking about, or else it's not if I don't know, it's just in my opinion, even though I'm so passionate about mental health, there were many times where I was like, why am I doing this? Literally no one cares. And I don't know if I have it in me this is not my income. This is not my job. So it's takes a lot of work outside of work. And I think hearing feedback from people, even if it's rare, this really saved me today, or I needed this to get through the week. I'm like, I have to keep doing this even for myself. It gives me such a purpose.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I'm glad that we can all like validate that right now, because I don't think we've ever brought that up really. The aspect of the issues with podcasting and just how in general it's like tough on the people doing it too. But yeah, those little slight comments, Liana and I are always sending it to each other because we want to like encourage each other too, because we're like, wow, like this actually affected this person. I bump into people from high school that I haven't seen in years and years, or elementary school, and they're like, oh, I listen to your podcast every week. I'm like, what?
Why?
And it gets me through. So
it's amazing.
It's crazy. So getting into our topic for today, can you share with us a little bit about some changes you've experienced within friendships over the recent years?
Absolutely. I think that if any of my friends, hopefully some of you are listening, listen to this episode, they're gonna laugh, because like this is like the theme of my life, like literally this topic. And I didn't even come up with this topic for this episode.
We were just like, maybe this will work. And it was like,
she's like, disclaimer, I'm not just doing this for me. They made me do it.
No, like my friends are going to listen to this and be like, did you beg them to talk about this?
Yes, it was us.
So I've experienced quite a few changes in friendships. First of all, something that everyone who's listening should know is that I am like fully anxiously attached. Like attachment theory, anxious attachment, me. Like I crave closeness with friends. And like if I haven't spoken to a friend in like 2 weeks, my first thought will be like, they're mad at me. Like that's something I've had to work on so much over the years. But more recently, I've really been experiencing changes with friendships because I've been like becoming more involved with my religion, which is I'm Jewish. And I've just become more involved in like the Jewish community here in New York, and like just doing a lot more. And I think a lot of my friends were kind of like, what is this change that you're doing? And it caused a lot of like uncertainty in my friendships. That's just a recent thing that's happened. But in general, over the years, there's been so many changes from being best friends with someone freshman year of college. And then you move to the city and you're like, oh my gosh, we're neighbors. Like we're going to be best friends again. And then realizing like, well, actually we're adults now with kind of different interests. So our lives aren't going to like perfectly intertwine the same way they did when we were next door neighbors in the dorms. Or, like I like going to this thing on Saturday and they like going to this thing on Saturday. So it's like, okay, are you free next Tuesday in 3 months? Like it's been so weird. And obviously when you live in a big city, you're introduced to new people. And then over the years, like I've dabbled in different friend groups from just meeting new people, but sometimes people come into your life and they're not really meant to stay forever. They're just kind of there for a season. And then when I feel like, wait, but we had a bond last year. Like what happened to us? And they're like we just bonded over that one thing. Like we're not, so I don't know if that really made sense, but that was just a lot
makes complete sense.
Yeah.
A lot of, just a lot of different types of changes, friendships that I've worked through and I'm still working through, but it's not easy.
No, as you were sharing that of the seasons, how friendships change in seasons, I was at a job and I was very close with like a few of my other colleagues. And I really thought that I was going to be friends with them for a long, long time. And now I don't speak to them. Like, and it's baffling. And like, if anything, I'm closer with a different group. And this goes back to like 2016, 2017. And it's like, part of me is sad. So I didn't know if like, it brought up that sadness for me, but how do you feel about some of these changes? Like, do you feel like you're also sad about some of these changes?
Very sad. And I think something that has been hard for me is like, I don't really let myself be sad. I know I feel sad, but I don't really let myself stay in that for too long because I get anxious so quickly that I don't feel the emotion. I just jump right to like, how do I fix it immediately?
Right.
Even if I haven't spoken to the person in like 3 months and everything's really fine, nothing happened, but then a spike of anxiety will come in and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to fix this. So then I reach out to them and I try and like force fit something that's like not natural. And they're like, what's going on here? Like we're fine, but like, how do you tell someone like, aka them to me, like, we're not best friends. You don't have to force us to hang out right now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I need to fix it.
Right.
And, so like, yeah, once I've like in therapy, let myself feel the emotion, I've been really sad about the changes. And I think actually, weirdly enough, once I let myself be sad and kind of like grieve it, then I was able to move on. But it's sad for sure.
No, it definitely is so sad. And it's like that urgency of that people pleasing mentality also comes up. Like, if they're mad at me, I can fix it. I'll be the friend that stays connected to everyone. So I'm going to keep making plans, and they'll be so happy that I reached out, and I'm that friend who just keeps all of her friends. And that can't always happen. And like you said, it's like we kind of grieve it. And sometimes we just have to mourn the old friendships and be able to accept that, like you said, they were here for a season. So what would you say are your experiences with friends and things in general that are maybe some signs of outgrowing a friendship? Because you said that, they can't always be here. But how do we know that we're outgrowing a friendship, or maybe that it's like toxic for us in your experience?
I think, I've had friends who, and this isn't anyone's fault necessarily,
Right.
but I think like I have been known as the anxious girl to a lot of my friends. And this is going to sound really sad, but I think like some people subconsciously aren't always okay with their friend growing out of it, because sometimes this is like kind of psychological and deep, but like sometimes it makes them question, like, okay, let me rephrase that. Like sometimes because I was the anxious girl, someone else felt like they could kind of put their anxiety on me because I would take it for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then like when my mental health was in a better place, my friends were like, why are you being different? And I'm like, I'm not being different. I got through that.
Yeah.
And they were like, wait, like, and it's not like we were openly talking about it like that, but I remember one time having lunch with a friend and they were like, how are you? And I was like, I'm actually doing really, really well. Like, I feel great. I'm calm for the first time in a while. Like, I was so
like
relaxed.
She's faking.
She got nervous. She was like, she was like, you're different. And I was like, I'm just doing well. And she was just like, okay. And like that put me into another anxiety spin because I was like, wait, am I different? Like, am I changing? Like, am I going to lose this person because I'm not the same anymore? And then I had to work through that in therapy and figure out like some people are not comfortable with their friends growing out of like anxiety or like moving forward with their mental health or moving forward with their lives. Like people want people to stay the same because, as we said, change is uncomfortable. So I think with I've noticed that like, and I'm not the type of person to be like, okay, toxic friend, goodbye. But I have to take mental notes and say like, okay, that person I'll go out with for like a good time, but I might not necessarily go to that person next time for like to talk about my changes because it's going to trigger them.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that's like something I've had to work through is just realizing like what friend is the friend who's going to be there for me and support any growth and development I've done, and what friend is maybe a little uncomfortable with that. And I have to say like, that's not healthy for me to be around. And that sucks that I can't go to that person anymore. Like that's really sad for me, but it's not good for me. Like it's not healthy for me to be like, I'm doing really well. And they're like, what?
Right.
And I'm
like making what? You like second guess it.
Yeah. And then I'm like, wait, am I doing well? And then I get anxious and I'm like, wait, why do I feel this way? I was doing so well like an hour ago.
I guess it's like really that feeling of, wow, it's feeling good. And all of a sudden now I feel guilt and shame or questioning and anxiety. So if I was surrounding myself with healthy people in general, or people at, I'll call it my level, of growth or where I'm at, I wouldn't be questioning it like this. I wouldn't feel sick. It's like your body knows before our mind sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. And the almost like the compartmentalizing that you've shared, that like, that's something I've also kind of put into practice, and that I've even encouraged around to like my friends or people that I come in contact with, because like you said, change is uncomfortable and it is sad to, have friendship shift. And a lot of times I think I've learned that like, okay, these friends I can go in and really be like, hey, I'm having a really hard day, and really kind of like vent and be really vulnerable with. And then others, like you're saying, like, okay, I'm going to go grab dinner with them, or, just kind of catch up on more of a surface level. And kind of learning like which friends you can kind of do certain things with and say certain things with.
Yeah.
Right.
You can
Exactly.
like sometimes, not that, this is always a thing to do, but sometimes you can like catch up with them. And if you haven't seen them in a while and you're kind of like relearning them, like where are they at this stage in their life? And, like you guys are both saying, it's so true that I can go to this friend for support and advice, or, just support in general. I can go to this person for a fun time. I can go to this person if I need someone to, smack me into place. We kind of have to filter that and identify where that's from. But overall, which we talked about in a past episode, it's no one else is responsible solely for, our growth and things that we're going to go through.
Yeah, I think something I have really had to learn, and I'm still learning, is that I've spent so much time being anxious about losing friends and the changes in my friendships that I don't often check in with myself and say, wait, which friends actually like make me feel good?
Yeah.
Like, which of these friends support me? Which of these friends is a friend? And which of these friends am I just so desperate to not lose because of my anxious attachment, but they're actually really not a good friend to me? Like, realizing that has been so hard for me because I'm just like so desperate to, honestly, it's kind of selfish. In some ways it's not selfish because I love this person. I don't want to lose them.
Right.
But in another way, it is kind of selfish on my end because it's almost like for me, I get to check off a box and say like, okay, I didn't lose this friend. I didn't lose this friend. Like, we're all good. Everyone's good. I have them all. And I'm not really like honing in on this one person and saying, what's our friendship like? How do we uplift each other? It's more about like my needs, which I'm trying to like restructure that. So I think when it comes to compartmentalizing, as we were saying, it's been helpful for me to be like, okay, like I love this friend and it doesn't necessarily mean I've lost them, but we don't really vibe when we talk about deep stuff. So we like, I'm just going to go to this person, as you said, for a good time. And that doesn't mean I've lost them, but it just means
you could
like
just say it in your head.
Exactly.
Because your needs are different than theirs. They might be fine with talking to friends once a month and not thinking much of it. But for you, like you're saying, you think about it, it becomes like ruminating thinking over and over, and it affects you. So in your head, you're like, okay, I just need to be able to check that box. But I call it appropriately selfish. Because I believe that sometimes we have to be selfish, but like you said, it's to meet your needs.
Right. Exactly.
Going back to what you were sharing about being more involved with your religion and kind of having things shift as like in most recent times. And so I'm wondering for you, like how did some of like these friends act and view this change in values and interests? Because that happens, whether it's religion, whether it's, like not drinking anymore, like for me, for instance, or whatever it might be. And how did you not internalize their reactions?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did? Of course.
Well, now.
Oh my gosh. This has been quite the journey. I have had a year. Like, this year has pushed me so much to keep moving forward with what feels good for me. As you said, appropriately selfish. Like, I spent so many years trying so hard to please everyone else in my life that, okay, let me rewind. I'm Jewish. I grew up Jewish. My family's Jewish. Like, I didn't convert. Okay. So this wasn't like a huge shock for anyone because I didn't grow up exactly like this. Like, it is a little bit different. And I do hear what my friends were saying when they were like, well, you grew up not religious, really, like doing different practices. For example, I don't have my phone on from Friday nights to Saturday nights now. So, Saturday nights I'll go out and like after when my sundown on Saturday night, phone's on, I'll do whatever, go to a bar, whatever. But Friday night to Saturday night, my phone is off. And I didn't grow up doing that. And most of my friends didn't know me that way. So obviously for them, that was kind of a big change because our lifestyles don't look the same anymore. And while I hear that that's very different for people and it's something to get used to, like, I get it. a lot of my other friends are also growing up and doing things for themselves. I've had a handful of friends move cross country this year. I've had a bunch of friends get engaged. Like, I noticed that everyone around me was doing these big life changes. So if you're married and moving to a different state, I also can't see you over the weekends anymore.
Right.
So mine was suddenly like this huge thing, because I think people were like, well, religion bad and like my change good, but it's like, but we're both going to be unavailable on the week. It was kind of like, I think
one's
that
more normalized.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of people in my life, and I understand it, because in our day and age, like, religion seems really outdated to a lot of people. I get it. I'm not here to like put it on anyone or explain it to anyone. Like, I've always just kind of been like, this is what I'm doing. Like, you do you and I'm doing me. But I do understand why a lot of my friends were like, what is this? Like, are you sure? Like, this feels weird. And I had to like do really heavy lifting to prove to them that I'm the same person. I just have different traditions. And that was so hard, because it was kind of like all at once. I got heavy pushback from like all of my best friends. And over the last 6 or 7 months, I had to like prove to every single person that I'm the same person. I can go out to bars. I'm laughing with you. We can hang out. Like, I can still make jokes. Like, I'm the same girl. I just, my life looks a little different. And so, yeah, for a long time, it was kind of like, well, wait a second, if they're freaking out, like, you know, is this even something that I should be doing? Because I did internalize it. They're making me second guess everything because they're so concerned. But I had a gut feeling for the last however many months. Like, I know this is what I want to do. I never really had a doubt, because it's been coming for a long time. And friends who have been really paying attention noticed little changes over the course of the last like 3 or 4 years. They noticed, okay, she started doing this, started doing that. So this year, when I was like, okay, I'm really taking the plunge on this, some of my friends were like, I get it. Like, I saw this coming, but it's weird, which is fine. And then some friends were like, this is out of left field. And I'm like, where have you been? Like, this has been happening for a while.
But that's also kind of interesting that you say that, because it's almost like, were you ever paying attention to me? Because I was always paying attention, so much to you guys.
Right.
And, like you said, it really made you second guess something that you really valued. But when you were saying those things, I kind of thought about what Liana was just mentioning of like people not drinking. And I've begun to see that immediately people think something's wrong, that immediately they think that you're in recovery, or, you had a horrible past and like all these things. And like you said, like religion, they think bad, cults, this, all these things, but engagement, moving, like those are like, wow, incredible.
Right.
It's just things that aren't discussed enough, or people are not fully educated on, makes people fearful.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's a general statement, but it really shows in our friendships. But for people with anxious attachment like that, we hold on to that, and other people might say, yeah, screw you, this is what I want to do. But for people with anxious attachment, like you're saying, you start to internalize, and you're like, what the heck? Like, I don't know. I guess religion isn't something important to me, I guess,
Right.
So that's really difficult. So aside from recent changes with maybe older friends and things like that, how do you navigate making maybe new friends as an adult? Because you mentioned, it's different as an adult.
Yeah. I mean, I think making friends as an adult it's like, on one hand, you have more control over it, because you get to choose what environments you're putting yourself in. Like, I think in college, you're kind of thrown in, or maybe you didn't go to college and you're just whatever, high school, like it's who's in your class. Those are becoming your friends, or like the people in your dorm, those are becoming your best friends. And I think the older you get, the more control you have. Okay, where do I want to go? What are the things I like to do? And then I where can I make friends there? So obviously something that's been incredible for me is becoming more involved in my faith has led me to a community. Like, that's like 90% of why people as adults, like, if someone's really becoming religious, like, why don't like take a look around at the community? Like, as I said, I turn my phone off on Fridays and Saturdays, and a lot of people are like, isn't that so restrictive? I'm like, you should see what I do on Fridays and Saturdays. Like, my adult, like my friends in my community, I have planned dinners and lunches every single week. No one has their phones on.
Mm.
Everyone's present. And it's like deep, meaningful conversations and like amazing food. And every week someone different hosts at their home. It's legit. It's like, it's beautiful and it's incredible. And I literally like would never want anything different. But yeah, as an adult, I mean, listen, you're not just going to walk into someone in the street and become their friend. Like you have to actively say like, I'm going to go put myself out there and go to the things that make me happy. So when I started joining this community, like no one knocked on my door and said, come to this community. I said, I want to go to synagogue because my faith is important to me. And by going, and obviously them having good food, I would stay and like, and I would stay. And through that is how I would like meet people and talk. And also like what's weird, and sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but like I also what's hard as an adult is like, okay, so you meet people at this thing, then you get each other's numbers or your Instagram friends now. Okay, you're not hanging out every second of every day, or you don't now have planned events. It's not like you have like a weekly thing that you're going to. You have to actively reach out to each other and say like, how are you? How's it going? And also these people all have full lives already with friends that they've had for years and things they do in their jobs. So I think like as an adult, I've had to realize that like, you know, how do I say this? Like, I'm not really leaning on my new adult friendships anymore for like the same fulfillment that I did in college with my friends. And they were like, I was like, this is my life. Like these people are my whole life. I think when I make new friends now, it's like, okay, like this is a great connection and a great bond. And like, it's so nice that we have each other, but I don't fully rely on those people. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, maybe it's just because they're newer. So I don't feel like they know my whole life story yet. So I don't feel like as quick to go to that person. But, on the other hand, I do feel like we can connect almost on a deeper level.
Right. Because you're finding yourself differently now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we have
and you don't have to over explain yourself to them.
Right. Exactly. And we have values in common, but based on what I'm doing in my life right now.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yeah. I love that.
Explain.
I love you're able to do those Shabbat dinners and getting together without the phones. And it's like the shared values, like you were saying. As we're wrapping this up, and we have some listener questions that we get to also.
Sorry if I talked for a really long time, by the way.
No, it's all
not
relevant.
Not at all. Don't worry about it at all. What do you do for your, you go to therapy, which is amazing. What else do you do for your mental health?
So I am a yoga instructor. I teach at Core Power Yoga on Mondays and Thursdays. And some days I really don't want to get out of bed. I'm like, please, it's so early. I teach at 7:30 a.m. I can't do this, but I have to, right? Because it's a job. And once I'm there, it's so like I'm doing the yoga, I'm leading the yoga, and I feel so much better when I leave because I'm like, okay, I took time in the morning. So in general, I think like grounding down before work and having something to do before work, whether it's just breathing for 10 minutes or doing a yoga class or even going outside, that I can tell on the days where I'm outside before work for a walk or doing something versus the days where I like roll out of bed onto my computer. They're drastically different mental health days for me. So the podcast, therapy, and I mean, also turning my phone off, like even if you're not religious, turn it off for a day, turn it off. Even if you have nothing to do with religion, like it's incredible.
Just to be more present. I can imagine.
Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Awesome. Well, this was really great. I'm glad we were able to get your experience with like these recent changes. I think a lot of people can relate. I know that we can. When we come back, we have some listener questions and of course our rapid fire.
Okay, so these are questions from just a few of them we chose from putting it on our Instagram page. So someone wrote in, how do you apologize to a friend you had a falling out with, but you were in the wrong?
That's tough. Um, I think approaching the friend with the understanding that, you may have hurt them. I think for me, there have been times where I know that I was in the wrong and maybe had a falling out with a friend. And then again, to bring it back to anxiety, I'm so anxious about losing them that it became more about me than about them. And I think like they noticed, like I actually have a specific time where I did this and I was so desperate for them to tell me that we were good, but it was more about me. And I think like really holding space for this person to, you know, explain how they feel, or reaching out to this friend and saying like, hey, I know I may have hurt you. I know I may have upset you. And like, I really am so sorry for that. And I really value our friendship and hope that, we can work back to getting to a better place. Like maybe it'll take time, but it's something that I really value. And I hope that you're on the same page. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. Like that's another thing. I have wanted answers so quickly because I'm so anxious. Like, tell me right now that we're good. And they're like, I'm not feeling great about this. And then I had an epiphany. I'm like, okay, I'll be here. I'm sorry. You let me know when you're ready. And then I had to stick it out for like 3 weeks and not hear anything from them. And I was panicking, but I just didn't reach out. And then they eventually reached out and said, thank you so much for giving me my space and my time. I really needed it. And now we're working back to like a really good place. And the timing was like horrible because I was so anxious the whole time. But I think making it about them and saying like, you're the one who's really hurt and I'm sorry. And like, this isn't about me. Let me know how I can make this better for you.
Right. Like not just focusing on the reassurance aspect of it.
Right.
Yeah. And giving them the space. That's hard to give them the space. Not an easy
and that's
feat.
a mature friendship you got going on there.
Yeah. I mean, it was really hard because my first reaction was like, what? Tell me what I did wrong now.
Yeah.
And then
there's no time.
Yeah. I was like, what? How dare you leave me unread? And then 10 minutes later, I was like, I'm so sorry. That was really mean. Take your time.
That's funny. That's so funny.
Our next question / last question. How do you grieve the loss of a friendship without having a conversation? Cry.
Make a burn book.
Yeah. I think everyone in the world, when something ends, everyone wants closure. Like everyone wants closure, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, everyone wants like those final words where you can wrap it in a bow and be like, okay, even though it's over, like we said everything we had to say. And that's just not life, right? Like we can't, we don't get that. And if you do, you're very lucky. I think, wait, you're saying the loss of a friend?
Yeah.
Loss of a friend. I mean, I think first and foremost, you have to accept that you're not friends anymore. I think like the more you try and tell yourself that it's not reality, like the harder it will be to grieve it. As I said earlier in the episode, like once you let the sadness come in and the grieving process start, you can actually then get through it. I had a friend that I became really close with during COVID. Like we quarantined together. And I was so sad when I realized after we stopped quarantining together that this friendship really had no future at all. We really had nothing in common and no similarities, but we got really close during COVID because it was such a, obviously crazy time and we were quarantined together. And for the longest time, I tried to make it work and I was so anxious about it. And the second I let it go and I accepted like that we're not going to be friends anymore, I was really, really sad. And I definitely cried about it, but then I moved on and it was the hardest thing. And I didn't get this person to say to me like, Sarah, we're no longer friends. Like none of that. It was just like, we stopped talking eventually.
Right.
And I just think that accepting it, coming to terms with it and like letting myself be sad was the best thing I could have done. Cause it was kind of like a sigh of relief. Then I just eventually moved on.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will say like they need closure, they need to know why and all that. And like, I always think like, why though? Like, what are we looking for? And if we get that thing, like, how will we feel differently than we do now? And a lot of times, like, we're shown exactly what we need to see, right? Like, you were able to see that there were no similarities and that, like, we got closer because of COVID. And like you said, that came with acceptance and being able to take those signs and use that as closure.
Yeah. And not like, is the closure so that they can make you feel like you definitely didn't do anything wrong, that it was more of a them thing. Like you said, Sarah, like making it more about, not about you entirely, but Liana is right. Like to have acceptance within ourselves. And friendships, breakups are, I want to sometimes say even worse than romantic breakups sometimes. And it's okay that we feel, because a lot of people will tell me, I can't believe I'm so sad over this breakup. Why, or this friendship ending? And I'm like, it's like a romantic breakup. It's very difficult, sometimes even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. My therapist literally would tell me, you have to grieve it. Like you have to grieve. And I was like, that seems so dramatic. And she was like, no, you have to grieve the end of this.
Definitely.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Sam, hit us with a rapid fire.
Okay.
I'm scared.
So I don't know. I thought this was kind of funny because I think we all know these shows, but what reality show would you be a better fit on and why? Like Jersey Shore or The Hills? Did you watch both of those?
I didn't watch The Hills.
Oh man. Do you know what it is?
What? No, it's okay. We can do it.
What about a different one?
What's similar to The Hills?
Laguna Beach.
Didn't watch that either. I know I'm crazy. I know.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
There's more.
What's like I'm thinking of an old one. What did you watch, Sarah?
I mean, I feel like it's, reality show about like, it's like an old and dicey has to heat, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
You're right.
Okay. Honestly, I feel like Jersey Shore. Because
why?
First of all, I'm from Jersey, but not their Jersey, but I'm from New Jersey. Honestly, I'm not Italian at all, but like they ate good food. And when I was in my party stage, like I could have 100% fit into this crowd.
Definitely.
And I feel like I could have been the one that was like the tamer one that people would have watched the show and been like, Sarah's cool because like she can party with them, but she's like not as wild as them. So like she keeps the group in check.
Yeah. I always wondered that, like, if I went on to like, would I be still like would I be the mother, or would they turn me and I would be just as crazy?
That's so
Or
true.
would the editors make you seem like you
right? Exactly. And what's fake?
That's so true. I feel like on a show where there's a lot of like, here's the thing about Jersey Shore versus like something like The Hills. Everyone on The Hills seems perfect. Everyone on the Jersey Shore was so obviously not perfect. Yeah. And I don't think I could have thrived on a show where everyone was perfect because I'm not like that at all. Like at all. And
Heidi show, and Spencer, they had like that abusive relationship. But yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. Like Jersey Shore, they were so flawed and like no one had like, I don't know. They weren't
so
like
raw.
It was just raw and different. And I was just like, okay, I'm down for this.
Yeah. I could probably see myself doing Jersey Shore too. I can't do The Hills. They all like are too pretty. Like I can't. Tell everyone where they can find you and your podcast.
Sure. So you can follow the podcast at It's Fine, I'm Fine Pod, not podcast. There was enough room. It's Fine, I'm Fine Pod on Instagram. And then me, you can find me at Sarah L. Sasson. That's N like Nancy. On Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, but I don't really tweet. That's pretty much it.
Nice. Thank you again.
Yes, this was awesome. We so appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences, and hopefully this will help some people hear it just straight from someone who isn't a therapist, finally, that we have on the show.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here. So happy we did this, and this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of On Thursdays We Thrive. We love learning and growing with you each Thursday.
If you enjoy listening to us, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. To connect with us on Instagram, you can follow @On Thursdays We Thrive.
On Thursdays We Thrive is a partnership between Liana Ross, Sam Triani, and Gooding Wellness, LCSW PC. If you are in New York and would like to speak with a therapist directly or to one of us,
head on down to longislandteletherapy.com or goodingwellness.com. Keep thriving.